Hello and welcome to this section of the course where we're going to be comparing waterfall and agile methodologies. Traditional waterfall methods for developing software are rapidly declining in popularity as more recently developed agile methodologies are increasingly adopted. During this part of the course, we're going to ask some key questions. What is waterfall? What is agile? What are the key differences between the two? And is agile always better? Or is there a place for waterfall projects still within the market? So let's answer the first question then. What is waterfall? A waterfall methodology is a linear process by which all the planning is done up front, and the next stage can only start when the previous stage has concluded. We identify at the very start the time, quality, and cost of a project, so we know exactly how long it's going to take, what it will cost, and ultimately what it's going to give us. The most widely understood and used waterfall methodology is Prince2, which is projects in a controlled environment. It was actually designed and set up by the government. It still absolutely has its place in the market, where knowing the upfront time, quality, and cost, i.e., scope, is imperative to the success of the project. The stages of a waterfall project are very similar to that of an agile project, where we would gather the requirements, do the design, build, test, and then ultimately deploy. The key difference is, though, that through the life cycle of the project, that you would only visit each stage once. And as I mentioned before, on completion of each stage, you would move on to the next, and you wouldn't go back in time and revisit any previous stages. An ideal waterfall project would be to build a house where you gather the requirements up front, you do all the design work, so you know how many bedrooms, living room, kitchen you're going to get. You build it, you then test it once you've fitted all the electrics and the gas, and then you deploy it to the customer, and hopefully it'll meet the user needs. One of the pros of the waterfall method is that there tends to be more documentation, since this methodology places greater emphasis on documentation, like requirements and design. Many organizations can actually find this reassuring. And because the waterfall process is a linear one, it is perhaps easier to understand, especially for non-developers or those new to software development. Often teams feel more comfortable with this approach. Some of the cons of the waterfall method are that often the people we're building the software for, the clients, don't know exactly what they need up front, and they're not entirely sure what's possible with the technology available. Some solution designers are often unable to foresee problems that will arise out of the implementation of their designs. And one of the biggest challenges with the waterfall method is that changes to requirements, so this could be things resulting from new technologies, changes in market, changes to business goals, can't easily be incorporated into the waterfall method. And ultimately, the product that you've created at the end of the project is the product you're left with, whether it's suitable or not. So that's the end of the first part of the presentation, answering the question, what is waterfall? So let's move on now to the next question. What is agile? Okay, so we already know that back in the spring of 2000, several developers got together, had a conference, and agile was born. But what exactly is agile? We talked about earlier that waterfall projects follow a sequential and linear process. Agile projects and agile frameworks follow an incremental and iterative approach to software development. And the phases between both are very similar, where we still gather all the requirements, we still design, build, test, deploy, and then ultimately maintain. The key difference is with a waterfall project is once it's started, we'll go through each stage all the way through to the end. And at the end, that is the end of the project. And there is no scope really for change, as we mentioned before. But because Agile follows that iterative cycle, then we are constantly gathering feedback from the customer. We are constantly iterating what it is that we're building. And we can do this again and again until the product is fit for purpose. Agile versus Waterfall key differences. Agile follows an incremental approach, whereas Waterfall is a sequential design process. Agile methodology is known for its flexibility, whereas Waterfall is very structured with little flex for change. Agile performs each phase every iteration, whereas Waterfall completes each phase of the project cycle only once. Agile allows changes in requirements throughout the project lifecycle with little impact on the scope, whereas Waterfall scope is planned and agreed up front with only little room for exception. We're coming to the end of this presentation now, where we're going to focus on the final two questions. Is Agile always best? When would Waterfall still be effective? And the easiest way to answer this question is by looking at the graph on the board. Down the left-hand side, we can see the requirements, the what, starting off with clear at the bottom and unclear at the top. And across the bottom, we have the technology, the how. To the left, we have known, and to the right, we have unknown. For a clear and known project, this would be known as simple, and a waterfall method would absolutely fit this type of project. But as the requirements become less clear and the technology less known, this would move us into the realms of complicated, where a hybrid waterfall and agile method may be effective. And as we get into complex, then we will be using the Scrum framework. And Scrum is something we're going to be talking a lot about moving forwards. If we get to the chaotic stage at the top right, then Kanban would be a good approach. So hopefully this graph gives you a clear indication of when Agile would be good, when Waterfall would be best, or ultimately when both could be used simultaneously. I hope you've enjoyed this phase of the course, where we looked at Agile versus Waterfall, and we answered some really key questions, such as, what is Waterfall? What is Agile? What are the differences? Is Agile always best? And when would Waterfall still be effective? If you have any outstanding questions, please get in contact via the contact details on the course details page. I look forward to seeing you at the next presentation.